Did you know this podcast is powered by Acast? Acast is the home of podcasting. For creators looking for freedom to grow their listeners and make money too. And creative brands looking for smart ways to advertise. Podcasters and advertisers in the know Acast. It's time you did too. Visit acast.com to find out more. Acast, for the stories.
Hey Eagles fans, this is Mike Kaye from NJ Advanced Media, and welcome to the No Huddle Show podcast, where we discuss anything and everything Philadelphia Eagles. You can read our content on NJ.com/Eagles, bookmark that, and you can subscribe to our exclusive Eagles Insider Tech service, where we'll break news, give you insider observations, and provide in-depth analysis. Through Eagles Extra, you can send questions and comments directly to us, and we'll respond to your phone. With me today, as always, is my fellow Eagles beat reporter, Chris Franklin. Today, we're going to go one by one with the positions and the depth charts and talk about what we've seen from the players in training camp. 8 camp sessions are in the books. Sorry, I sometimes forget where I am during training camp. There's a lot going on. But Chris, on that note, how you doing?
Not too bad, man. I can agree, man. Days start to blend in. I mean, in one of the stories I almost started put it was Tuesday, and that was yesterday. So yeah, days start to blend in together. How you doing, man?
I'm well. You know, my son's home sick from daycare, has a little bit of a tummy bug, but I'm here. You know, as my grandma says, she goes, "I'm still here." I think she's talking about other things, you know, more morbid when she says that, but I'm here. Let's just get into it because look, we're doing a podcast every week once there's a break in camp, so we can kind of, you know, reiterate what's going on in training camp. And I think this week was very different than the first week of camp. I think some of the guys who were kind of struggling on the stock watch kind of pick themselves up and vice versa. So let's kind of get into it. Let's start with the quarterback position. You are keeping an exponentially close eye to all three quarterbacks. That's been your main job in camp. I'm going to let you go out and discuss all three quarterbacks because this has been your project throughout the summer.
Well, thank you very much. Welcome to the QB. No, I was kidding now. But what's going on right now is Jalen Hurts. Just looking overall, I mean, you asked a good question yesterday when you asked Nick Sirianni if he's been named, why hasn't he named him QB1? And he still hasn't done it. And it's one of those things where it's like you start to run questions a little bit. And when you hear, I wonder if it's more he just wants to keep a competition going, because by and large, he's been the best overall quarterback, in my opinion, between the three, given that he's not going to be the most accurate. But when you look at other things that he's done, he's been accurate enough, and then he brings a lot of other stuff to the table. And when I say that is, in the individual drills, he seems to struggle at times a little bit with his accuracy, especially when he throws to the running backs or the wide receivers when it's just them by themselves, or even when it's one-on-one, when it's the wide receivers going against cornerbacks, it starts to get a little he starts to miss a lot of high. That's one thing I've seen with him. He's missing the high when it comes to a lot of these passes. But when he gets to 7 or 7 and lately, and when it comes to 11 or 11, he looks a lot better. He looks more in focus. He looks more in tune. He's putting the ball at least in the area where it can be caught. So I think that's a decent thing. We all know what he does with his legs, and he's done that so far. When he's looked around and saw there was nothing open when it came to receivers, he's took off and run. When you look at Flacco, I think he's doing what you expect him to do, be the veteran guy to pick up, if he's called upon, pick up first downs, dump the ball off to running backs and tight ends in short yardage. I mean, don't get me wrong. I was shocked that he still had a little bit of mobility left when he rolled out and tried to escape a run and was able to throw off his back foot, almost like Bernie Kosar a la S, throwing sidearms and stuff like that. But he's been okay in that aspect, and you just want him to help out Flacco and the other guy, Nick Mullins. And Mullins is up and down. You see parts where you're like, you know what? You can see why this guy was brought in to be the third guy. He has a lot of talent. He's recovering from that elbow surgery. He he throws a lot of when he's on, he's extremely accurate. I mean, that one ball that he threw that the video's been shared a lot of times when he threw it to Jalen Reagor, he put that on the back pylon, right in a perfect. It wasn't too much air for it. It's perfect for allowing him Reagor to make a catch. He does that. But then you look about a couple plays somewhere else, he makes a throw that you're like, where was that going? And he's also fumbled the ball a couple of times, and that's a little concerning, especially you don't want your quarterback. You want your quarterback to be your best person who could control the ball and not fumble and turn the ball over. So overall, the camp, I mean, all three started out slow, but it looks like as camp progresses and they're getting adjusted to the system, they're getting a little bit better as well too. And I really want to see what they do next Thursday against the Steelers.
Yeah, and you bring up the preseason game against the Steelers. I think Jalen Hurts absolutely has to play. As you mentioned, he has done well when he has a bigger target range, right? Having that DB in the picture kind of allows you to have a bit more hand-eye coordination with where you want to launch the ball. And I think, like you said, throwing the air has been a chore for all three of these guys. Throwing one-on-one has been a chore for these guys. But when you have that team setting, when you have an offensive line in front of you or you have some action in front of you, it's been much better for this trio. Last week we touched on it, that we thought that there could be a competition between Mullins and Flacco. I think Flacco has had a very good second week. I think there's no question he's the number 2 guy at this point. Mullins kind of retracted a little bit. Like you said, he's had some ball security issues. I've noticed, he's working with the third string offense. Harry Kreider, the undrafted free agent, has had some really big issues with snapping the ball, both with the second team and third team offense. So I know it's not just Mullins. There's also been parts where pass rushers have actually knocked the ball out of Mullins' hands, gotten in trouble with defensive line coach Tracy Rocker. But the fact is, Mullins is not holding on to the ball well. He's also a smaller quarterback. Smaller quarterbacks typically have smaller hands, which makes it more difficult to hold on to the football. So there's all that. I also think, my 53-man roster projection is going to come out Saturday morning. I think he's a guy that you can easily get to the practice squad unless he has like a blow-up training camp or a blow-up preseason. And even then, I don't know if you need to stash him based on the roster dynamics. So it'll be interesting to see what Mullins does because he's going to play the majority of the preseason. I think you're going to see Jalen Hurts maybe play a combined 2 quarters in the preseason. Flacco maybe plays a combined 2 or 3 as well. But the rest is going to be the Nick Mullins show. And I'm just interested to see how he does, because realistically, as a guy who's started and won games in this league, you would think he'll cut through everybody's third string defense like it's Swiss cheese. So, let's move on to the next spot, because I think this is become the talk of camp with and without pads. The running back group is stacked, and I don't think a lot of people felt that way initially. I think a lot of people were down on Jordan Howard. I think a lot of people were down on Jason Huntley. They didn't know what they were getting in Kerryon Johnson. Kenny Gainwell is a bit of a mystery after taking last year off. So there's a lot of question marks there. I have the Eagles keeping 5 running backs right now, and I'm almost tempted to say lock it in that they're going to keep 5 running backs. What's your overall thoughts on the group so far?
I think it's the deepest position group on this team right now. And they all bring something different. I mean, and I look at, we all know what Sanders was going to do, and Scott has looked a lot better than I thought he would as well. So I put him RB2. But then you start to look at what Kerryon Johnson has done to this point, catching the ball out the backfield. We all knew he was good at that. And then the biggest surprise to me has been Jason Huntley. I mean, by the way, I love the piece that you wrote, man. That was really good about Jason Huntley. Catch that on NJ.com. But Huntley's been, we all knew he was fast, but he just seems to kick it into another gear and has that explosiveness. I mean, when they run those stretch plays and running outside, he's consistently getting around the corner. And he's looked very well. So when you look at that, and Huntley's going to be the key, I think, is going to be as the last guy, like the fourth, fifth guy, because if I really want to see this team put him back as a kick returner, because I think he just adds that much much more to him, to that dynamic.
Yeah, and to your point, he had 5 kickoff returns for touchdowns in college, and Dave Phipp didn't even look at him. So
yeah.
I think having a new special teams coordinator might help. Let's talk about Kenny Gainwell a little bit. I'm sorry to cut you off, but I think we need to discuss this. I don't know if Kenny Gainwell plays very early on. I know they're very high on him, but it's very clear he's been out of action for a while. It's also clear that he's a rookie. He's had some plays as a receiver. I haven't really noticed him in the running game. I don't know what the pass protection situation is there, but I know that was a question mark coming in. Having Huntley on the roster helps you kind of take your time with him. So how intrigued are you by Kenny Gainwell heading into the preseason?
I very much am. It just seems to me like he's just thinking too much while he's out in the field. Like he's still trying to process everything and not letting his athleticism take over. Because when they decide to use him like on a swing pass or he's an outlet on a pass and he's get thrown to him, it's just a quick read and react and he's going up the middle of the field. But when it comes to the more developed passing routes, it just looks like he's thinking through the motions, like I have to go here or I have to go here. It's like he's still processing. But eventually when he gets everything, he gets more acclimated with this offense. The fact that I'm excited to see him and Sanders on the field together at the same time because the possibilities are endless of how you can run them with that pony. That 2 running back sets. I mean, there's a lot you can do on that offense, and it adds another dynamic. So it's going to be a little while. Like you mentioned, he's been out of football. He was out of football for a year, and once he stops basically internalizing and processing everything in this offense comes second nature, he can really be dynamic.
All right, let's get into wide receiver because, again, another story at training camp to kind of catch you guys up if you're not big on social media or you've missed some of the practice reports that Chris and I have put out on NJ.com. Jalen Reagor had a rough start to the week. Well, he's had a rough start to training camp in general, but particularly on Wednesday, he was absolutely reamed on the field by Nick Sirianni and Kevin Patullo. Flash forward to Thursday. As Chris mentioned, he made the catch of training camp, the one-handed grab that you can see on Eagles Twitter, their official Twitter site. Unbelievable one-on-one catch. He did really well against Darius Slay, looked very confident. And, you know, as somebody who's covered several training camps, sometimes it just takes one play to kind of spark a player's confidence. And it seemed like he got that confidence after that catch because then he had a drop, but immediately bounced back in team drills, caught a pass deep, and then Nick Sirianni, excitedly celebrated with him afterwards. He had a nice contested catch on the sideline against Steven Nelson. So I think maybe Jalen Reagor starting to feel himself. Obviously, he was dealing with a personal issue off the field. He failed his initial physical. There's all that. But it doesn't matter where you start, it matters where you finish. And it seems like he's starting to kind of get into his stride. The same can be said about Quez Watkins, who missed the first week of training camp with a non-COVID illness and some physical issues. He's been phenomenal. I mean, he's putting on a show in camp on a daily basis. His route running's been terrific. There was a play against 8th string nickel corner Lavert Hill where he made a move. His first cut was inside. He then juked to the inside, selling an inside move, but didn't actually move. Lavert Hill froze on the outside, and then Quez continued his route inside and had an easy, wide open catch in one-on-one. He's made some plays down the field. He looks fast. He looks competent as a route runner and as a guy who can play multiple positions. I think he's going to be one of those guys that rotates with Jalen Reagor at the Z and the slot positions. So he's somebody to be excited about. I think he's a lock for the roster. Travis Fulgham's looked pretty good, especially against Darius Slay too. Right now I have 4 guys locked. I have Devontae Smith, Jalen Reagor, Travis Fulgham, and Quez Watkins. I think Greg Ward's very close to that. I know some people want more talent or more play-making ability out of that 5th wide receiver spot. I just think he's a veteran that they know they can count on, especially in the slot when you're rotating positions. He's also solid on special teams. He could be a gunner. And then I think the battle goes down to Hightower, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, and really that's it. I mean, Michael Walker's out with a foot injury. Andre Patton's there. Jamon Osborne seems like poised for the practice squad, even though he's had some moments. But I think it's really, if they're going to keep 6 wide receivers, it's either Hightower or Arcega-Whiteside. Where do you stand on that duel of former draft picks?
Well, when I look at Arcega-Whiteside, we're headed down this road again, man. I really think you look at, he makes some plays, and you see like, all right, cool. Because there was a time he made Flacco made a throw. He made this diving catch, like, and you're sitting there look like, well, we've seen this before. And then when it comes to game time, you're starting to look, it's like, oh, here we go again, and it's not there. So I just think Travis Fulgham took the role that J.J. Arcega-Whiteside was supposed to have, and I just think this might be his last training camp with the Eagles. Look at some of the other guys. Hightower, he's been inconsistent. In today's stock watch, I had him stock down because you'll look at him and he'll run a route. There's no denying his speed. He'll run that fly route, that 9 route with ease, and 50-50 ball was a 50-50 ball. That's true with him. You'll see at halftime he'll catch it. Halftime you're like, how did he hold this in? But when it comes to his other routes, it seems like he's having issues with them. And it's that his inconsistencies might finally catch up to him. He hasn't done anything really special teams. He's not a special teams player, in my opinion. Looking at him, I don't see that as his future is crazy. But and getting back to Greg Ward a little bit, I think he makes as well too, because this team doesn't really have a like that veteran savvy guy on that roster right now. You look at it, so he might be. I don't want to just come off the wrong way like the Den Mom, but he might be he's like the big brother. He'll be the big brother that they can all rely upon, because when you look at everybody else, they're like 2 years. All the people of significance, like even besides Fulgham, who's technically 3 years, you got everybody else 2 years or less. So
yeah, he's like Giannis's. Giannis, yeah. Giannis, sorry. It's been a long day. The kid woke me up and he's got to tell me. Okay. So he's like his older brother who's just like chilling there on the bench. Does this team need to trade for a veteran wide receiver, in your opinion?
I don't think so right now, because I think you still want to get a lot of these guys a lot of reps, and with as much as they've been using the running backs and tight ends, I think they're going to think that is like an extension of the wide receiver core, is going to and use a lot more tight ends, man. What do you think?
I think I agree with you. I think that's how they're going to look at it, but I disagree with you in that they need somebody, because I just feel like, look, we know that there are questions about Devontae Smith's size, and obviously having a knee injury early on is not a great look. Jalen Reagor's been inconsistent. Quez Watkins has been very good in spurts, but what do we really know? Fulgham has been electric when he's gotten the time, but who's to say man coverage won't shut him down again this year? Greg Ward can't pick up any yards after the catch unless he's wide open. So part of me is like, if you have a player who's solid, but you're probably not going to keep from a numbers standpoint, maybe you look to Arizona and say, hey, look, we'll swap you this player for Christian Kirk, a guy who can play all 3 wide receiver positions and might not have a very big role given the investments you've made in DeAndre Hopkins and AJ Green and some of these other players. So that's where I'm kind of at. But, we'll keep an eye on it. I think the preseason will tell us a lot about some of these guys. But I agree with you, your take on John Hightower. It's very easy for him to run a go route. I've yet to see him particularly get open on other types of routes, if that makes sense. So let's move on to tight end, which I agree with you is an extension of the wide receiver position, as much as this organization has tried to make it not that. It's been reluctant to do that, because I do think this team really wants to be an 11 personnel base badly. I think Jeffrey Lurie, who talks about speed all the time, really wants it to be an 11 personnel base, but they also don't want to give up on Zach Ertz, who's still here. I've been impressed by Zach Ertz's, overall approach to being a teammate, being a leader. even if he's frustrated, he's going to be a professional. And I think that's what the Eagles are counting on. This isn't a situation where the dude wants out and he's holding in. He's actually out in practice making plays. He actually looks very, very good. He looks angry with the way he's running. It's going to cut into Dallas Goedert's playing time, but I think those two guys know what the deal is. If they're both here, I think both of them can be very talented. I think they both realize that wide receivers maybe 3 or 4 deep at most, and they're going to get their targets. I also think Jalen Hurts has done a better job in this training camp of hitting tight ends appropriately. From there, look, people know about Dallas Goedert. They know about Zach Ertz. Let's get into the third tight end competition, because I think the Eagles have to keep a third tight end. Like, it's like whether Ertz is here or not, they have to keep 3 tight ends. So here's the group. It's Jason Kroom, Tyree Jackson, Jack Stahl, Caleb Wilson, and obviously everybody's favorite on again, off again, third tight end, Richard Rodgers. The Hakeem Butler experiment at tight end has been over for about a week. He's been lining up with wide receivers. We talked about Tyree Jackson in basically all of our write-ups. I don't know how they're going to get this guy through waivers. He's just an athletic freak. It seems like the second and third string offense have kind of developed their attack around him in a lot of ways, unintentionally. Jack Stahl's done some stuff. I haven't really noticed Caleb Wilson this week. He was fine the week before. Richard Rodgers has kind of faded into the background. Jason Kroom's dealing with a knee injury. I think this team's learned from the Noah Togiai incident. And I just think Tyree Jackson's a guy who's poised to make this roster, because with Richard Rodgers, if he's on the roster in week 1, his contract becomes guaranteed. Or his salary becomes guaranteed. So in theory, you could cut Rodgers and then bring him back or put him on the practice squad. It's not like anybody was rushing to sign him. He just signed after the offseason program. So are you in agreement with that one?
I actually agree. I agree with that, because Jackson seems to build a rapport. I mean, Flacco said he's been amazing in camp. He has been. That's been his go-to guy during these second teams. I just want to make sure that he's a good blocker. And it seems like a lost art. I mean, you hear so many times these receivers converting over to playing tight end, but you always forgot that, hey, you got to have him in there a block at times. I mean, he's a big guy, and if he's able to even just to get in somebody's way, if he does that even well, I think he's good. And it could be one of those things where you put him on the roster, you save, like you mentioned, put Rodgers there, and I think Stoll gets stashed a little bit because of what we saw during some of the near the goal line routes. I mean, I think his usage.
We're not allowed to report that officially what he was doing, but yeah. Right. What I will say is the usage of said player would be very on brand for me.
Yeah.
So if you know anything about me and my personal interest in the game of football, I would say that Jack Stahl checks a box. Cool? All right, we're good. We got it. I feel like we're talking. You never watch I don't know how much you watch the kids shows, but like they're always talking to you and saying like Mickey will be like, Can you give me a thumbs up? Ha and my kid will be like, thumbs up.
I've been thinking about putting together stuff because 400 episodes is not too far off. And I've been thinking about putting stuff together of different moments. That voice, Mickey impersonation, may make its way onto that. That was great.
Well, gee golly, Chris, can we talk about the tight ends? Should we move on to the offensive line?
I think we're getting a little goofy with some of this stuff.
Oh, that's pretty good.
The No Huddle Show podcast is not sponsored by Disney whatsoever.
I can also I'm very limited in my impressions. I can do the Roadrunner, but that's it's as far as I go. But anyway, hey, boo-boo, let's move on to the offensive line. Anyways. All right. So,
Mike, we have to talk about Jason Kelce and everybody else now.
That's pretty good. Hanna-Barbera would be very proud of this podcast. All right, so let's go into the offensive line because, look, Brandon Brooks and Isaac Seumalo have hamstring injuries. Surprise! And so they're on the sideline. But let's talk about this left tackle battle because, look, I've preached patience with this. I do think I've spoken to people in the organization who are not panicking about Andre Dillard through the first 2 weeks as much as the fan base is. And look, Jordan Mailata's run away with this thing, in my opinion. Just from my eyes, just from my perspective. We don't know what's going on in the film rooms. We don't know what's going on in the morning walkthroughs. We don't know that stuff. But based on one-on-ones, which Jeff Stoutland hates to judge people off of, then I don't understand why you do it, by the way, because no one ever blocks isolated the way that they block. In team drills, it's just Jordan Mailata is like stoning Derek Barnett, who's having a terrific camp, who we'll talk about later. But, from my perspective, this is Jordan Mailata's job, which is unfortunate for the Eagles, because we've talked about this before. The ideal setup would be that Andre Dillard would win this, and Jordan Mailata, who has the ability to play both sides of the line, would be able to be that ultimate swing tackle. The thing is, for Jordan Mailata to win this job, he has to run away with this competition. Here's what he's going up against. Andre Dillard is not only a former first-round pick, he's a former first-round pick that they traded up for. So there's more investment in that than a regular first-round pick. He also can't play both sides. If you bench him and he has to be a backup left tackle, you really can't go back to him because you're killing his confidence. We all know he's struggled with that during his career. And also, I'm not really shooting third. I don't know what you can get for Andre Dillard at this point. I think he's still athletic. I think he looks better physically than he has in the past, but it really hasn't added up to a ton of stuff. And frankly, when you're losing battles in non-padded practices as a finesse blocker and a footwork guy, that's a problem. That should be your bread and butter. So where are you at with the left tackle battle?
It's Mailata. It's Mailata's to lose at this point.
Yeah, really I think we should call it, frankly. But, you want to get into the preseason and you want to see what happens.
Yeah, and now I'm worried that you might lose him. And Dillard. How many times, to be a guy who was supposed to be the next Jason Peters, basically Jason Peters' replacement for years to come. And he was highly touted coming out of college, and you're sitting there looking like this guy has the footwork. You're starting to find out what's this missing piece, and you just can't put your finger on it. We all heard the way he was talking coming into the season. He seemed like he had a renewed focus. I think it's just basically that attitude he has. When I think of somebody who's going to be protecting a quarterback especially as a left tackle, I think of somebody who's going to be nasty enough, not only just has great footwork and gets a good leg kick and uses his arms. I want to see somebody who looks nasty or looks like he takes things personal if he gets beat. And I've seen that out of Mailata when he got worked a couple times. I've seen him get worked, but overall he's had good ones. But when it comes to Dillard, when he gets worked, it just looks like, wow, I just got beat. Wow, I can't do it. He's in his head.
There's definitely on the subject of cartoons, there's definitely a Charlie Brown aspect to Andre Dillard with the way he practices. You know what I mean? He's just kind of all right, whatever.
When he gets beat, it looks like Eeyore a little bit. That's the thing. One time when he got driven back, I want to say it was Hurts and quarterback, but maybe Flacco. Boy, he got driven back, and he just, to me, I want to see somebody who comes back in the next play and wants to try to drive the defensive end 10 yards down the field or pancake them the next one, or at least attempt to do it. And he just took it like it was another snap. Nobody's going to win 100% of those snaps, and he didn't bounce back the way you wanted to see somebody do that wants to be a starter.
Yeah, I don't think he's been horrific, but I don't think he's been good, if that makes sense, right? When you're watching an offensive line one-on-one, when you're talking to other beat writers, you go, was that a win? Was that a loss? What do you have? And sometimes you're just it was kind of a win, but it wasn't really, or it was kind of a loss, but it wasn't really. That's kind of what Andre Dillard is. It's kind of a win, it's kind of a loss, whatever. It's never a definitive win. And I think that's a problem, especially at left tackle. when you have a mobile quarterback. I just think Jordan Mailata is so much more physically talented. And now the technique's catching up. And he's like stonewalling guys like Josh Sweat, who's running rampant on everybody else. And so I think that's extremely impressive. I think both of them should get an entire half of each preseason game, frankly, at this point. I want to see them play. I mean, obviously don't want to risk them to injury, but because Dillard obviously has a history of injuries, and so does Mailata with the back. But like, I want to see one of them play an entire half against Pittsburgh, and then another one play a whole quarter, and then the next thing switch it up. Like, those guys should be on the field for 3 quarters, one of them. You know what I mean? And then you can hand it over to Brett Toth or whatever you want to, Toth, excuse me, whatever you want to do. But let's get into some other positions. I think Nate Herbig, who I had as a on the bubble guy, is now a lock. Jack Driscoll's a lock. Here's the thing. If you have Dillard on the bench, Driscoll's going to have to be your main right tackle. And then, Dillard's going to have to be your main left tackle. Driscoll will be your right tackle. And then Herbig will back up all 3 interior spots. So from there, you've got that covered. Those are your active game day offensive linemen, right?
Right.
But then I think you need a 9th guy because, let's say that Landon Dickerson stays on the non-football injury list and LaRaven Clark stays on PUP for a while. Those guys will eventually come back. But to me, I think Luke Juriga has had the 9th best camp, if that makes sense. I think, him being a center, with the history of Brooks and Sam Allou's injury histories and Kelsey getting older, Nate Herbig is probably going to be thrust into action at some point, and Juriga can play guard and center, and I think that that's important, as an extra man. You don't want to lose him. He's also very Jason Kelsey-like. The coaching staff really likes Opeta. They really like Casey Tucker. I don't think either one of those guys is going to get claimed off waivers. Ross Pierschbacher, he's been fine, but I think you can get him to waivers. Matt Pryor is a guy who's been starting at right guard with Brendan Brooks out. Maybe he sneaks on. I thought he was almost definitely not going to make the roster prior to Brendan Brooks getting injured. We'll see how he does in the preseason. He was not very good in the preseason or in live practices last year, so we'll see how that goes. Toth, he's a practice squad guy in my opinion. So that's where I'm at. Let's move on to the defensive line. Unless you have any qualms with what I said.
No, that's pretty spot on.
Okay.
Pretty spot on.
All right, so let's move to the defensive line. So they're using a hybrid defensive front with Gannon. So I think the numbers are going to be a little skewed than what Eagles fans are typically used to. Normally the Eagles keep about 10 defensive linemen and 5 to 6 linebackers. I actually think it's going to be more equal. I think there's going to be about 8 or 9 defensive linemen and 6 or 7 linebackers. So the guys that I have locked in right now are Derek Barnett, Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham, Javon Hargrave, Josh Sweat, Ryan Kerrigan, and Milton Williams. Now, Milton Williams is playing defensive end. He's going to be a main big end backup, probably a 5 technique to Brandon Graham. I think you'll see Barnett and Sweat stand up as the 7 or the edge rusher, the true edge. And then I think you'll see Kerrigan play kind of the Sam hybrid role that they've been kind of testing out with Jannard Avery. He's been injured with a thumb injury during padded practices, so we haven't really been able to see it. But he's going to be a guy who rotates at end with Barnett and Sweat, and then plays Sam in base packages, in my opinion. Are we in agreement on that one?
Yep, I'm cool with that. Yep.
All right. So from there, their defensive tackle depth isn't like terrific because if you have Milton Williams, or as I call him, Milty Shake, playing defensive end, yeah, he can come in if Javon Hargrave or Fletcher Cox has an injury, but you need a guy who's a true defensive end, in my opinion, who can play nose tackle, who can play 3 technique. I think that guy's Hassan Ridgeway. I've been impressed by Rayquan Williams quite a bit, and I think he can be a very good nose tackle in this league, but I also think you can get him through waivers, and remember, the Eagles can boost 2 guys from practice squad every week, and I think Rayquan Williams is the ideal candidate for that. T.Y. McGill has also played really well, but he's really only a 3 technique, so I don't know if you stash him, especially with a hybrid front, because worst case scenario, you could always move Brandon Graham inside and have Derek Barnett take over for him. You know what I mean? Like there's ways to move around. Rookie wise, just getting into it because I don't want to like dwell too much on this. I haven't really been particularly impressed by Teron Jackson or Patrick Johnson. Patrick Johnson's playing more linebacker, but he's also learning a new position. I think both those guys can get to the practice squad. They were 6th and 7th round picks. Marlon Tupelotu, Mr. T, I have not been impressed by him at all. He's not been very good in one-on-one drills. I haven't noticed him at all in team drills. I think a lot of the Eagles 6th and 7th, like that's the 4th, 6th through 7th round picks. I think one guy is going to make it. We'll talk about him later, but the rest are probably going to be stashed on the practice squad. That's something that happens when you have 10 draft picks. Typically, not everybody makes it. Jaquan Bailey's had some flash, but I don't really think that that's going to be a thing. Anything you disagree with?
I think Jackson's been played all right. I think that he's held his own at times, and he's gotten a little bit of pressure. But I completely agree. I thought that Tuipulotu, Mr. T, when they got him, and now seeing that they were playing this hybrid 3 and with him playing potentially in the 3-4, I thought he'd play all right. And especially after he's mentioned before on Sirius XM that this system is eerily similar to the one that he played at USC. So I figured that would give him an edge, but he hasn't done well. I don't know if missing all that time during mini camps is playing a role in it, but it's been, lack of a better word, underwhelming in there. But otherwise,
what I've been surprised with is like he strikes me as a guy who would have a lot of upper body strength. And lower body strength, like overall strength in his body. I haven't seen him anchor well at all. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And for a nose tackle, you've got to be able to hold your ground. It just feels like he's not even taking on one defender or one blocker well.
Right. Yeah. You want that guy to be able to take the guard, to get the guard with the center as well. But it's like the center's being able to handle, like, I think it was Pierschbacher. I think it might have been.
Yeah. Pierschbacher's had some good reps against him. Jariga's had some good reps. And the thing is, Jariga's not a strength blocker. He's a finesse blocker, and he's doing well. So let's move to linebacker, where this is kind of like a hodgepodge group, right? You have your natural off-ball hook responsibility linebackers, the Will and the Mike. That essentially means that they get to cover the area in zone. Those are mostly going to be your nickel package guys. The base package Sam linebacker is kind of being used as what you would call an auto or an elephant, kind of that 3-4, 4-3 under hybrid rusher. They've been using Osman, Patrick Johnson, and Jannard Avery there. I think Jannard Avery makes the most sense for that position, even though I don't really think he's been rosterable based on his performance. Excuse me. Right now, I have them keeping 7 linebackers. I think Jacoby Stevens is a guy who they envision as kind of a nickel, but I could also see him taking some Sam reps because he's a pretty good blitzer. It seems like he's got really good speed to the quarterback. He takes angles very well. He seems just like a smart player. So that would make sense if he were to be the one that they inevitably have backup Kerrigan in that role. I think that Alex Singleton will be taken off the COVID list any day now. He and Eric Wilson are likely your starters. I think Edwards is probably an early down sub package player. I think that Bradley is a backup middle linebacker. Sean Bradley's a backup middle linebacker. Davian Taylor's the interesting guy to me because Sean Bradley and TJ Edwards really to me are simply middle linebackers. They don't have the range to play outside. And Davian Taylor's a guy who I think can be the backup Will. Where are you at with the linebacker group right now?
Well, I envision Stevens. I've liked what I've seen in limited parts of him. I liked what I've seen, and I even see him like, and say if it's like a dime package, and you'd be going really, really light there, but having him as the lone linebacker on the field and having him cover in the middle, I like that. There's so much you can do with him, and as you mentioned, when you bring him down to the side and blitz him off the edge, you can do a good job with that. So I like that. Johnson's an enigma to me. Like, he can rush the passer. He can stand up and do well. I want to see how he can do it and drop back and play in space. That's where I really want to see him grow a little bit more. I think he can be a good guy, like a good depth guy. And then as you mentioned, Bradley and Edwards are more middle linebacker guys, and I'm curious to see if they do like to bring that like a double A gap edge and see them, because I remember Bradley and I remember Edwards. They've been good blitzers, and to see them be able to rush the passer. If they decide to, if defensive coordinator Jonathan Gannon decides to bring some more rush, I think that could be very intriguing to see. We probably won't see it in the preseason because they won't want to show their cards on their different exotic looks and everything, but that could be really intriguing. And I want to see how, when Singleton really finally is activated, how he reacts, and if it's going to take how quickly he's able to get back to the level he played at last year, especially missing all his time due to being on a COVID list.
Yeah, and I think one of the benefits as we get into the secondary with Stevens is he can let you go a little light on safety, because in a pinch he can play that safety role based on his college tape. He seems really smart. He's also super athletic. He has ball skills. He had an interception off Jalen Hurts earlier this week, playing with the first team. He's dealing with a hamstring injury right now, so we'll see how long it takes for him to get back on the field. You'd like to see him in the preseason. Maybe they stash him on IR. So we get into the defensive backfield. Obviously, Anthony Harris is going to be one of the starting linebackers. I think Kayvon Wallace is that third safety job locked up. Rodney McLeod's working really hard on the sideline, but he's still on the PUP list. We'll give him the benefit of the doubt and say he makes the roster for week 1, even if he's not actually active for that game. Like I said, if you keep Stevens, you can go into week 1 or week 2 with Harris, Wallace, either Marcus Epps or Andrew Adams, who I think has been really impressive in his 2 practices back from the COVID list. So I feel like it's going to be a 4-man group. Braylon Arnold's doing everything he can to make this roster. It'll be interesting to see, like, if they don't keep somebody like Jannard Avery, maybe it's Arnold that takes his spot. It's just like this roster's so hard to figure out when you don't really truly know what the defensive front's going to be and how they plan to, how much they plan on running base and nickel and all that stuff. But it makes it fun, right? Especially entering the preseason. So with that said, let's say McLeod is starting at one safety spot, Harris is starting in another. By the way, it's going to be a split safety look. The free safety and strong safety aren't a thing anymore for this Eagles defense, in my opinion. It'll be based on sub packages where you have them line up, etc. Both players can play free and strong. The starters, so can Kayvon Wallace. Okay, and so you have Kayvon Wallace as the third guy. Who's your fourth guy right now at safety? I know we skipped corner. We'll get back to corner, but yeah.
I go Epps. I go Marcus Epps.
Yeah, I agree.
Still think he's played well. I think he's played well enough. You see him; he's still flying to the ball. He's still like he has that good lateral movement, and he's still in coverage. And then you can't forget that he's good on special teams. And I know we talk about we talk about it a lot when we talk about these players, but that's going to be the best way to build your roster, especially toward the bottom. Like when you get to your 45th, 6th, and 7th guys, he's good. He's good on special teams coverage in that area. So I think Epps has played well when he's been playing safe in his defensive back role, and has been playing some tight coverage. I noticed that he's done decent. I think he's got the edge on that position right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's also helping Marcus Epps is, like we talked about with Richard Rodgers, Adams is a vested veteran, so if they don't want to guarantee his contract, they can cut him for week 1 and then bring him back in week 2, which would help Marcus Epps make the initial roster, and then you could go from there. I also think Marcus Epps has probably some of the best ball skills in the secondary, which isn't really a high bar, but I like what I've seen from him. I'll give you a dark horse, Elijah Riley, because I think that his special teams work is really kind of shown through over the last week or so. But yeah, let's move on to corner, because obviously this has been the topic of the summer, really, on the defense for pretty much everyone, not just the media, but fans and really spectators in general. So they bring in Steven Nelson before camp. He's had kind of an up and down camp. I think he's pretty much been what you expected for a number 2 corner who has not played or trained in this defense for very long. He and Slay will be the starting outside corners, although Zach McPherson, the rookie, has been a revelation during training camp practice. I was huge on him when they drafted him. I know a lot of people were like, the guy should have been drafted in the 7th round. Now, if you watch his tape, he reminds me so much of Sheldon Brown, and his physicality in practice has only furthered that evaluation process for me. I think he's very intelligent, very physical, very technically sound, excuse me. He's not going to beat you on speed. He's not going to beat you, just natural talent, but his ability to understand the game. He's got really good instincts. He's got really good coordination. I think he's a really special guy to kind of watch develop over the next few years, because once Steven Nelson books it out of here after 1 year, I think Zach McPherson's your number 2 corner with Darius Slay for maybe 1 more year. And then, they'll draft somebody next year. But McPherson, to me, his upside is a very good number 2 corner. And so once you have those 3 guys on the outside, you look at Avonte Maddox, who I think's had a solid camp. He hasn't been terrific, but he's been solid. And then I think his backup's going to be Josiah Scott, who I've been really impressed with the second and third team defense. Where are you at with those 5 guys? I guess in the cornerback group, and then who would be your 6th guy between Michael Jacquet, Craig James, Lavert Hill, who's still frozen from Quez Watkins route running, Kayvon Seymour, who I have genuinely not even noticed, not once, not like literally. I forget he exists every time I take attendance.
He's there.
Yeah, he's
there.
I mean, he's there. So there's 4 guys competing for that 6th spot. If they're going to keep a 6th spot, that guy's going to be mostly a special teams player, and he's going to have the ability to play both outside and inside, because he's going to be active on game day.
Yeah, I agree with your 5 cornerbacks, and getting back to McPherson, I'll be honest, I had severe reservations when they came to select him, because when it comes to cornerbacks in the Big 12 and the Pac-12, I just have red flags, given that those offensive conferences and some of those cornerbacks that come out there, you're like, ugh,
totally understandable
for SEC. But looking at, if I had to go to a 6th corner, I'm going Craig James. I think he's had a good job in coverage. You've seen him. He's been on a lot of the receivers' back hips. He's breaking up some passes. I thought he's done well. I thought he showed well when it comes to one-on-one drills against some of those wide receivers. And I see the thing with Seymour is just, I don't know, but I'll go to this. Michael Jacquet. I really thought he would bounce back and have a great second, not great, that's putting it a little strongly, but have a good bounce back second year. I thought, especially as a bigger corner and getting used to the league and learning from his mistakes he made. But he's had issues. I mean, in the corners, I mean, he's covering tight ends. He's covering some of the bigger receivers, and he's being called for holding. I saw the field judge threw a flag on a holding on a corner route, Jackson, and he's been called a couple times for that. And I know he wants to be physical and try to reroute receivers and try to make plays, but it's not working for him so far. And he's been a little disappointing for me to this point in training camp, and I think he's going to have to step up his game and do it quickly before he might be on the outside looking in on the roster.
Yeah, I mean, you and I are in lockstep on that entire evaluation of the secondary. Special teams, Aaron Cepas has been fine. Actually, a pretty good interview. I was surprised. Rick Lovato has been the Super Bowl champion and Pro Bowler that you would expect. Jake Elliott's been a little inconsistent. He bounced back from a 4 of 6 day the next day. My kid had me up at 2:00. I'm pretty sure his designs on keeping me up all night were so that I would fall asleep during special teams drills. I didn't actually fall asleep, but I must have mentally checked out when Jake Elliott was kicking field goals, because I don't remember that ever happening. Supposedly he went 6 of 6. So shouts to him. I don't think we really need to talk about specialists, but make sure you guys are daily coming to NJ.com. We're doing extensive training camp notes. In my opinion, our notes are as extensive as anyone out there. And then on top of that, you've got the great work Chris is doing, following the quarterbacks around. I mean, he's paying a lot of attention to everything that they do. And then remember, you can also sign up for Eagles Extra, NJ.com/text. We're having a lot of fun there. Make sure you give us 5-star ratings for the No Huddle Show podcast. I know there's been some pushback about our weekly updates. We do that in case people are living under a rock or just are looking for a quick listen to keep updated, on the week ahead. Obviously, there have been less things going on, so some of it can be dated at times, but we appreciate you tuning into those as well. Chris, final thoughts heading into the first week of the preseason. Who is the player that you think needs to step up the most that's been here for at least a year?
Ooh, that's a very good question. I'll go. I know it's going to be low-hanging fruit, but I'm going to go J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. I think he has to – he's going to be going probably most likely against second-team guys, given his area on the depth chart. So he's going to need to find a way to put things together, because if he can't beat second-team guys in the role he's currently in right now, it's lights out. So he needs to step up. Who do you think?
Yeah, I'm going with Matt Pryor. I think this is a really huge 3-week stretch for him in his career. Obviously, he's like 6'8", so he's going to get looks elsewhere just based on his natural size. I just think you want to be coached under Jeff Stoutland. He's going to make you better. And this was a guy who a lot of people thought could replace Big V as like the sixth man of the offensive line. Last year was basically a disaster. He's getting an opportunity to play with the first team offense. I think he just has to take advantage. So for Chris, I'm Mike. We will give you another one of these as a preview to the preseason game on Wednesday. So that'll be our next show. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you sign up for Eagles Extra. We will talk to you on Wednesday.
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
I'm Alan Crossley, and as a certified master hypnotist and NLP practitioner, I know a thing or two about helping people to relax. If you've ever had trouble falling asleep, we'd like to invite you to listen to the Tracks to Relax Guided Sleep Meditations podcast. Join the millions of people who've put an end to occasional insomnia and discovered just how easy it is to relax deeply and fall asleep fast at bedtime. Reduce stress and get the rest you deserve by listening to a soothing sleep meditation tonight. The Tracks to Relax Guided Sleep Meditations podcast really is the most relaxing way to end your day. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Acast recommends.